Alright, so it's finally time to do our first script. It's going to be something relatively simple. You would have seen this being used in the Pokemon games, but when you move across and you hit something that you cannot move in that direction anymore, you'll start hearing collision sounds. So it's in Pokemon, it's like dun, 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 as you keep trying to walk in that general direction. So I thought we'd make a script that replicates that for RPG Maker. Alright, and I don't really need to do that since I can change it in the database, so I'll just get rid of that. Alright, now this is going to be relative to game player. So it's up here and there's game player. And we'll look around for their stuff, and I actually know gameplay doesn't have anything related to map possibility into it. That's actually inherited. So in game character, since gameplay is inheriting from game character, that also doesn't have anything to do with the map possibility stuff. That actually comes in character base. See, that's also inherited. So in game character base, you have here, def possible. Alright, so what we can do is, we can copy this, and we can go down into a new one. We can call it collision sound. Collision sound, and we'll just paste it there for the moment. Then we'll go back up to game player here, and we'll copy that. Put it there. Okay. Now, obviously, you have to put an end on it because it's a class. Alright, so now we copy the possible method, and that's actually coming from an inherited class from game character. Alright, but the inherited game character base, I think it is. Yep, game character base. This actually belongs. This is inherited for both game player, game actor, and game event. So any changes you make to it in game character base will affect all of them. But since I'm using game player and I'm going to make changes to it inside game player, it's only going to affect game player because, like I said, when you inherit stuff, it basically copies the code into it, and it's still your class that's being modified rather than the original one. Alright, so it's def possible here, and it takes in arguments x, y, and d. D being direction as stated here. I don't need that. Alright, so x, y, d, and I don't need any of this because I'm going to alias it. So let's begin, and we'll start with alias. My name, obviously. Collision sound. Collision sound. The class name, game player, and the method name, which is possible. You can't put in question marks in the alias name, by the way. Don't do it. Possible, and palm. I press space. Alright. Do it there. Paste it. There we go. We got our alias thing now. So what we can do is, as you can see, it's returning false, true, and false, and true, and all this stuff to tell you whether or not you can actually pass somewhere. And what that means is, if you look at what it's doing on the side here, unless and if and all this stuff, so it's gone unless returned false unless game app.valid. And what that means for this is, if I'm here and I try going over here, there's no map here. I can't walk there. Even if my character has a through option on it, it can't go there. And then after it checks that, it then goes return true if through or debug through, which means if my event or character has through checked on them, they can walk over here. Or if I'm holding control, they can walk over there. Or then it goes down, and then it goes map possible x, y, d, meaning where you are currently standing and where you want to walk onto. And then return false if collide with characters, which means events. This won't actually collide with a character because this one's priority is set to below characters. Okay, that's what it does. And if you passed all those checks, to return true, which means you can actually walk in that direction. So that's how the default method does it, and we don't want to replace that because other people might want to be using that for something or other. So instead we alias it. And what we can do is we can go possible is equal to x, y, d. But there. Alright, so that's actually going to return true or false back to possible, and that's pretty much what we want it to do. So now we can do an if statement down here. We can go if possible equal to false, then we can play a collision sound. So RPG se.new, and let's go with byte 1. I think it's byte 1. We can do 80 and 100 dot play. Now we'll give it a whirl, make sure it works. Oh, yeah, my bad. Nope. Go to grab that and go return possible, because as we've pretty much overwritten the method, even though we're calling the original, it's not returning true or false back to whatever it was calling it. Now we can actually move. There we go. I see. So there is no byte 1 anywhere. I thought there was a byte somewhere. Oh, it's just byte. Okay. Damn it. Alright, just byte. Now we can play it. Should work. And as you can see, it made a lot of SE sounds pretty damn quickly, and that is a real big problem when you're in your script calls, because your script can run up to 60 times a second, and it can actually run more than that, but that's your general amount. So it can run up to 60 times a second, which means you're hearing 60 SEs at once, and that's generally not what you want. So I don't know, kind of, we need to have a timer on it, so to speak. So we can go to game player, and we can go to initialize, I think it is. Yeah, game player, somewhere, there you are. Initialize, great. So we have initialize here. And we'll grab that one, we'll copy it. Back down here, paste it there, definitionalize. Of course, we're going to alias this one as well. I'm just going to copy this. So that way I still have my random numbers here. These 3 collision sound game player, and what I'm modifying is initialize now. So initialize, copy, put there, initialize, and now so far we can go. We can put a timer here now. Alright, and now timer can be at collision sound timer equals 0. And in our possible thing, we can go collision sound timer equals 60. Well, 60. Right? So if possible is equal to false, and collision timer is equal to 0, you can now play this. Alright, so it's going to equal 60, and it's not going to go down anywhere because of the way the if statement works. Because this is not going to equal to 0 after it hits this one the first time, you'll never hear it a second time. So you also need to alias the update method for game player, and where is that? That should be down here somewhere. Update, there we go, there it is. Frame update, copy it. Now the update method in pretty much every single class is something that's called every frame. So this is going to be called at least 60 times a second. Put it there, and of course we'll copy our alias method again. We'll put it there, and update, and change this to update. Update. Cool. And now with our collision timer, we can do the following. Collision timer minus equals 1, unless collision timer. Alright, that's a new keyword, isn't it? Unless. What unless does is the exact opposite of if, and I would actually prefer to use unless here as well. So unless possible equal to true, or collision timer is greater than 0. It looks a little bit better, because what unless does is it does the exact opposite of an if statement. It's going to run this unless one of these are true, because you know the or statement here, it still works the same for this. So if this is true, or that is true, then this won't run at all. It's the same for this. This is going to go minus equals 1 unless collision time is actually equal to 0. Alright, so we'll run it. Play it, and we'll start walking into the wall. Let go of the arrow key. Now you don't hear it anymore, so go across again. Alright, and that works just as you would expect it to. So what we can do now is, since you want to give this script out to other people for them to try it out, you can now make an editable region. Alright, so go to class game player here and space it out a little bit for what you want to do. And now you can go collision SE and do it in the first letter has to be capital, by the way, because you want to make this a constant variable. And as I explained, constant variables before means they will never be changed. Okay? So they're only changed like if you specifically tell them to be changed, like in the script here. Whereas I can't go down here and go collision SE is equal to whatever. You can only change it here the first time. So collision SE is going to be bytes, right? And we can make the wait timer collision wait timer equal to 60. There's that a little bit, right? And we can put collision SE here, which will pass in that string to here. Collision wait timer to here. So now we can change this. Now I can make it applause now. Applause 1. That way you know it's changed. Alright, so you know it has changed, and now you can put some comments in here. So the sound you want to play, the collision sound you wish for it to play. Wish to play the wait timer. Wait timer in frames until next collision sound. Alright. And now since you're the scripter and they're not, they're probably not going to know the difference between this and down there. So you go editable region. Copy. Editable region. Now you can put it there, and now they know they only edit the crap inside of here. So equals applause and equals 60. Alright, now I have another cute little trick to show you guys, because I think this one is very useful and very important to know. You don't need these unless you actually want to use them, and since I'm not using X, Y, or D except to pass them into the original method that wants to use them, I can get rid of it and replace it with this. An asterisk and then ARGS, and that's I don't know what this is actually called in Ruby, but I have heard it's called a variable length argument list. That's the technical name for it as far as I know. So what you do is you can make an array and you can put a asterisk in front of it, which kind of gets rid of the square brackets. And I'll show you what that means in a moment. For now, we can put args for this, for the method name here, and for that method here. Okay, and what it does is I can go up to here to applause. Alright, and I can do a comma and go 80 and then 100. Right, and that's my array, and as you know from arrays I can make it as big as I want, but you know, for now I'm doing this. So I have applause 1, 80, and then 100. So the SE file name for the sound effect, and then the volume, and then the pitch. And I'm sure I could write that over here on the side somewhere, but anyway. Now what I can do down here is, this is basically what I'm doing with putting the asterisk in front of the array. I am doing the following. When I put an asterisk in front of the array, like so, put it down here for now, I am pretty much doing this. Copy that, put it there, and I am basically, I have the array placed here, and when I put an asterisk in front of the array, I'm basically going get rid of the square brackets. And as you can see, because RPG SE.new requires 3 arguments, as in applause 1 and then 80 then 100. If I use this to get rid of the square brackets, I now have that and a comma, then that and a comma and that, right? And that's exactly what I need to pass in. So I can actually use that and put in an asterisk and collision sound. Nope. Copy. And it does the exact same for the arguments in our method calls. So for this one, I don't particularly know, nor do I really care about the arguments used for this method, of this original method. So I'm just going to put this here, and this will allow me to take as many arguments as I damn well please. I can have 0 if I want, or I can have 1,000. It doesn't really matter because this is an array, and an array can have as many arguments as you want it to have. And then I'm just passing that array into that method call for the next one. So the array does not get passed as that. You do have to have the asterisk in front of it because that gets rid of the square brackets. So it is being taken in as arguments for each element in the array. Now, I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but hopefully you kind of understand the gist of it. Alright, so if we play this, and we walk to the side, it still works the exact same. So we have learned some new keywords today. We have learned unless, which is really just the exact opposite of an if statement, meaning do this unless this thing is true. Whereas an if statement goes do this only if this is true. Alright, and we've also learned about putting asterisks in front of an array to kind of just get rid of the square brackets in it and pass it in as an argument. Alright, now we do have to keep in mind about the return possible stuff here, because as you saw before, I sort of a little bit forgot about it, and that's something you need to keep in mind. So the original possible method, press Ctrl Shift F to do that, by the way. Def possible game character base, it goes return false, you know, etc, 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 if true, and then false and all that stuff. So we are actually calling this method, and then we're passing in the result into a local variable. And then using that local variable, we are deciding whether or not we should play the collision SE. Okay, and then if we are able to play it, then we put in the collision wait timer. And then we return that local variable back to whatever we want to know. Alright, and then we have the update method here. The update is a method that's called every single frame. So if I was to put a message box underscore p in here and go A, I would see this be called every single frame, and that's probably not very good for me because then I'll have to hold enter for the rest of my life to turn it off. Okay, so that's called every single frame, and a frame is a lot quicker than you can blink, so don't put a message box underscore p into it. Initialize is only called once, as we already know. So, and this is something we need to kind of cover here, because if I was to get rid of this, copy it, get rid of it, then start it, new game. Obviously it doesn't play anymore because the script isn't there, so I'll save it. Then I'll go back into here and I will paste it again and I'll play it. Now look what happens. Undefined method minus for nil class. Now on the line that had that error was collision sound timer, and can you imagine why it had that error after we pasted it in afterwards? Well, that's because of the initialize thing here. What happens is initialize is only run for the game player when you start a new game. So if I was to continue from an old save game that didn't have this initialized, then it won't run for them, and that's a bad thing. So this right here is going, you want me to minus equals 1 from what? That's basically what your computer's saying to you. I don't know what you want me to do here. So initialize, we can put a message box underscore p in here so that way you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Initted, go play. Initted, so when it starts, new game, initted, as you saw, and play it again, initted, continue. Alright, so as you saw, when you when you start the actual game itself, it says initted because it actually went through there, but it only does that for its own, checking for bugs purposes. And then when you start a new game, it goes through the initialize method again for the game player, because you're actually initializing the game player for real this time. But when you go to continue, as you could see, there was no message box popping up saying initted. So that means that this was never called when you went there the second time. Alright, so a way to avoid this is I can actually not have to go to initialize here and put anything into it. Instead, I can do this, and I can go over here, collision timer equals 0 unless collision timer is not equal to nil. And what nil means is basically the following. Nil means that you've tried to access a variable or something that doesn't exist, and it doesn't have any purpose at all. So since it went to initialize before and it didn't initialize collision sound timer, that means the variable here itself was nil when you tried to minus equals 1 from it. So if it's nil, then make it equal to 0, so that way it's now an integer number and you can actually minus equals 1 from it. And that way you go in here, unless collision timer, sound timer is not equal to nil, meaning it's actually something. Okay, so we'll try it now. There we go. So it works the second time but not the first, so we don't actually need to change the initialize method for that purpose, unless you actually wanted to save it or something. Okay, so no longer need applause, just byte. Okay, so we return possible because possible is getting the original return true or false for if you can pass or not. So unless possible is equal to true, meaning I can walk in that general direction, then play the collision sound, but only if the sound timer is also equal to 0, because unless sound timer is greater than 0, don't play it. Right, and you can change the collision sound timer here because it's put it here. Okay, so we put some comments here to tell people what this is. So the collision sound you wish to play, volume and pitch. You shouldn't think of people as if they're idiots, so they should probably understand that means file name, then volume and pitch. But if you want to go more in depth, you can do that. But also another thing to keep in mind is this is an editable region, and again, you are not the only scripter in the world, so maybe other people want to use this for their own purposes, so you can call this collision SC or collision wait timer, but you should also give it a more sort of unique name. In this case, collision SC is kind of something that I'm not going to expect other people around the world to be using in the game player class, because unless you yourself are making a collision sound effect for the game player, you shouldn't be having collision SC in here anyway, because it has nothing to do with anything else. And if that's the case and you did make a script for collision for the player, then that means that either my script or your script is going to be used, so it's kind of not really a big deal in this case. So anyway, that's how you make your first script, and I'm going to paste this up in online, and I'll give it a link in the video description, so check it out. But basically, as long as you understood what I've done throughout this tutorial, you are very good to go.